My name is David Martinez. I'm 34, a single father working 2 jobs in Miami Beach. And what happened when I saved a stranger from drowning turned my entire world upside down in ways I never could have imagined. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I was finishing my overnight shift as a beach maintenance worker, picking up trash and preparing the sand for another day of tourists. My 8-year-old daughter Emma was still asleep at home, and I had exactly 2 hours before I needed to wake her up for school and then rush to my second job at the auto repair shop. The medical bills from her asthma treatments were piling up, and the landlord had already given me a final notice. 30 days to come up with 3 months' rent or we'd be on the street. That's when I heard the screaming. A woman was thrashing in the water about 50 yards out, way past where the lifeguards would normally patrol. The early morning joggers on the beach were just standing there, pointing and shouting, but nobody was moving. Without thinking, I dropped my trash bag and sprinted toward the waves. The woman went under just as I dove in. The current was stronger than I expected, pulling both of us further from shore. By the time I reached her, she was barely conscious, her lips already turning blue. I managed to get my arm around her chest and started swimming back, fighting against the tide with everything I had. My lungs were burning, my muscles screaming, but I kept going because that's what you do. You don't let people die when you can help them. When we finally made it to shore, she was coughing up seawater but breathing. She was maybe 25, with dark hair plastered to her face and wearing an expensive-looking dress that was now completely ruined. Before I could ask if she was okay, the paramedics arrived and whisked her away in an ambulance. I never even got her name. 3 days later, everything started falling apart. I showed up for my shift at the auto shop, and my boss Tony was waiting for me with a pink slip and a cold expression. "Sorry, David," he said, not looking sorry at all. "Corporate's making cuts. Last hired, first fired." But I'd been there for 2 years, longer than half the other guys. Something didn't feel right. Then I got home and found an eviction notice taped to my door. Not the 30-day warning I was expecting, but an immediate order. Emma saw it when she got off the school bus and started crying, asking if we were going to be homeless like the people she saw on the news. That night, while Emma was doing her homework, I called my brother Miguel to see if we could stay with him for a few days. "Look, man," he said, his voice strained. "Maria doesn't want any drama around the kids right now. You know how it is." I'd helped Miguel move 3 times, lent him money for his wedding, even co-signed his car loan. But now, when I needed him most, he was suddenly too busy to help family. The next morning, I was loading our stuff into my beat-up Honda when a black sedan pulled up. The window rolled down and a man in an expensive suit leaned out. "David Martinez? My name is Richard Sterling. I represent someone who's very interested in meeting you." He handed me a business card with gold lettering. "There's a car waiting for you at the Marriott downtown. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't be late." Before I could ask any questions, the sedan drove away. I almost didn't go. The whole thing felt like some kind of scam, and I had enough problems without getting mixed up in whatever this was. But Emma's inhaler was almost empty, and I needed the insurance from a real job to get her prescription refilled. So I borrowed $20 from my neighbor for gas and drove downtown. The Marriott lobby was all marble and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where my work boots felt out of place on the polished floors. Richard Sterling was waiting by the elevator, same expensive suit, same cold smile. "Right on time," he said, leading me toward the elevator bank. "She's very eager to thank you properly." We rode up to the penthouse floor in silence. The elevator doors opened directly into a massive suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Miami skyline. And there, sitting on a white leather couch, was the woman I'd pulled from the ocean. She looked completely different now. Her hair was styled perfectly. She was wearing a business suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. And she had the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. "Mr. Martinez," she said, standing up with a warm smile. "I'm Victoria Blackwood. I believe we've met, though under rather unusual circumstances. Blackwood. As in Blackwood Industries, the real estate empire that owned half of Miami. As in Billionaire Heiress Victoria Blackwood, whose face I'd seen on magazine covers in the grocery store checkout line. I wanted to thank you, she continued. What you did was incredibly brave. Most people would have just called for help and watched. She gestured toward a coffee table where a briefcase sat open, revealing more cash than I'd ever seen in one place. This is a small token of my appreciation. $50,000. And I'd like to offer you a position at one of my companies. Executive security. 6-figure salary. Full benefits. Company car. I stared at the money, thinking about Emma's medical bills, about the eviction notice, about how this could solve every problem I had. But something felt wrong. Why? I asked. I mean, I'm grateful. But this seems like a lot for pulling someone out of the water. Victoria's smile flickered for just a second. Let's just say I believe in rewarding good people who do the right thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Richard Sterling's cold smile, about how quickly my life had fallen apart after the rescue, about coincidences that didn't feel like coincidences. So I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I used the library computer to research Victoria Blackwood. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 weeks before I saved her, Victoria had been named as the primary beneficiary in her uncle's will. Her uncle, who had died in a suspicious drowning accident while swimming alone at night. The same uncle who had been fighting a very public legal battle with Victoria over control of the family company. The same uncle who had reportedly changed his will just days before his death, leaving everything to a marine biology research foundation instead of to Victoria. But somehow that new will had disappeared. The coroner's report said accidental drowning. But the private investigator hired by the research foundation had found evidence suggesting otherwise. Security footage from a nearby hotel showed 2 figures on the beach that night. Not one. But the footage had mysteriously been corrupted before it could be properly analyzed. I printed out everything I could find and stuffed it into a folder. My hands were shaking as I walked back to the motel where Emma and I were staying. Had I saved a murderer? Was the near drowning some kind of setup? And if so, why involve me? The next day, I got my answer. I was dropping Emma off at school when Richard Sterling appeared again, this time stepping out from behind my car. Good morning, David. Have you had time to consider Ms. Blackwood's generous offer? His tone was friendly, but there was something threatening in his eyes. I'm still thinking about it, I said, trying to sound casual while positioning myself between him and Emma. That's unfortunate, he said, pulling out his phone, because thinking too long can sometimes lead to complications. He showed me the screen. It was a photo of Emma getting on the school bus, taken from across the street. Beautiful daughter you have. It would be terrible if anything happened to her because her father made poor choices. The message was crystal clear. Take the money and the job or else. That afternoon, while Emma was at her after-school program, I drove to the address Victoria had given me for her office. But instead of going inside, I parked across the street and watched. For 3 hours, I saw Richard Sterling go in and out twice, along with several other men in suits who looked more like enforcers than business executives. Then, at 5:30, I saw something that changed everything. A young woman emerged from the building, and even from across the street, I could see she was crying. She got into a beat-up Toyota and sat there for several minutes, her head in her hands. Something about her distress bothered me, so I walked over and tapped on her window. Are you okay? I asked. She looked up, and I could see she'd been crying hard. They fired me, she said, after 6 years. They said I was asking too many questions about the Foundation audit. Foundation audit? The Marine Biology Research Foundation. My uncle left them everything in his will, but somehow Victoria's lawyers are claiming the will is fake. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. I'm Sarah Blackwood, Victoria's cousin, and I think she killed my father. Sarah agreed to meet me at a diner near the beach later that night. She brought a manila envelope stuffed with documents. My father was going to expose Victoria's illegal land deals, she said, spreading papers across the table. She's been buying up properties through shell companies, then having the city condemn them for pennies on the dollar so she can redevelop them. It's fraud on a massive scale. She showed me bank records, emails, and recorded phone conversations. This foundation will was real, she said. My father wanted to make sure his money went to something meaningful instead of funding more corruption. But the night before he was supposed to meet with the lawyers to finalize everything, he drowned. I finished. And now you're the hero who saved his killer from the same fate. Sarah looked at me with desperate eyes. They're going to use you as character witness. The brave single father who risked his life to save sweet, innocent Victoria. It's perfect PR for when the murder investigation heats up. I felt sick. What investigation? The news said it was ruled an accidental death. Because Victoria owns half the city council and the police chief plays golf with her lawyers every weekend. But the FBI is starting to ask questions about her land deals. They need her to look sympathetic in the media when the indictments come down. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside our motel room made me jump. I kept checking the locks, peeking through the curtains, wondering if Richard Sterling's men were out there waiting. Emma kept asking why I was acting so nervous, and I didn't know what to tell her. The next morning, I made a decision that would either save us or get us both killed. I called Victoria's office and told Richard Sterling I was ready to accept the job offer. We arranged to meet at her penthouse suite again that afternoon. But this time, I wasn't going empty-handed. Sarah had given me a small recording device and taught me how to use it. Get her to talk about her uncle, she said. Get her to admit she knew about the will change. That's all we need to prove motive. The elevator ride up to Victoria's penthouse felt like it took forever. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. But when the doors opened, Victoria was there with that same warm smile. Like we were old friends. David, I'm so glad you've decided to join our team. She gestured toward the couch where contracts were laid out next to another briefcase full of cash. I think you're going to love working for Blackwood Industries. We take care of our people. Like you took care of your uncle? I asked. Her smile never wavered. I'm not sure what you mean. The will. The one where he left everything to the Marine Foundation instead of to you. For just a second, something cold flashed in her eyes. Then the smile returned. My uncle was confused near the end. Dementia runs in our family, I'm afraid. He was constantly changing his will, making wild accusations about family members. It was very sad. I pressed the record button in my pocket. But convenient for you when he decided to go swimming alone at night. David, she said, her voice still sweet, but with steel underneath. I think you may have been talking to the wrong people. People who might give you the wrong impression about family dynamics you couldn't possibly understand. People like your cousin Sarah? Victoria's mask finally slipped. The warmth disappeared from her eyes, replaced by something predatory. Sarah is a disturbed young woman who's been spreading lies about our family for years. I've tried to help her, but some people can't be saved from their own delusions. She stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. You know, David, when I was struggling in that water, I thought I was going to die. Do you know what goes through your mind when you're drowning? You think about all the things you've done wrong, all the people you've hurt. You promise yourself that if you survive, you'll be better. Did you keep that promise? She turned back to me with a smile that made my blood run cold. I realized that some people deserve to drown, and some people deserve to be saved, so they can serve a greater purpose. She gestured toward the contracts. Your purpose, David, is to be the hero who saved Victoria Blackwood. The single father who proves that good people still exist in this world. The character witness who will testify to my essential goodness when certain legal challenges arise. And if I refuse, then you'll discover how quickly good people can become victims of their own poor judgment. She nodded toward the window. It's a long way down from here. Accidents happen to people who don't watch their step. I looked at the contracts, at the money, at this woman who had murdered her own uncle and was now trying to buy my silence. I need to think about it. Of course. But don't think too long. She walked me to the elevator. Oh, and David? Emma has such a lovely school. St. Mary's Elementary, right? I drive past there sometimes. So many children crossing those busy streets. It would be terrible if one of them didn't look both ways. The threat was clear. Sign the contracts and take the money, or watch my daughter pay the price for my conscience. That night, I called Sarah from a payphone outside a gas station. I got her talking, I said, but she's threatening Emma. We need to move fast. Meet me at the marina tomorrow at dawn, Sarah said. I have someone I want you to meet. The someone turned out to be FBI agent Patricia Chun, a serious woman in her 40s who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Ms. Blackwood gave us copies of the documents, she said. We've been building a case against Victoria for months, but we needed someone on the inside to get us the evidence we couldn't obtain through warrants. You want me to wear a wire? We want you to go back to that penthouse and get Victoria to confess to her uncle's murder. With your daughter's safety hanging in the balance, she might get careless. 2 days later, I was back in Victoria's elevator, wearing a wire so small I could barely feel it. This time, Emma was safe. Agent Chun had arranged for her to stay with a foster family under federal protection until this was over. Victoria was waiting with champagne and a pen. I knew you'd make the right choice, she said. Smart men always do. I sat down and pretended to read the contracts. Before I sign, I need to ask you something. That night in the water, were you really drowning? Or was it all part of the plan? She laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Oh, David, you really think I'd risk my life for a publicity stunt? Then why were you swimming alone at 3 in the morning? I wasn't swimming. Her smile turned predatory. I was disposing of evidence. My uncle's real will, along with some other documents that could have caused problems. The ocean is very good at making things disappear permanently. My blood went cold. But then how did you end up in trouble? Bad luck. A rogue wave caught me while I was weighting down the evidence bag. By the time I surfaced, the current had pulled me out farther than I expected. She poured herself champagne. But sometimes bad luck becomes good fortune. Your rescue turned me from a potential suspect into a victim. A woman who nearly died the same way her uncle did. It was perfect symmetry. So you did kill him. I defended myself against a man who was trying to destroy our family legacy. She sipped her champagne calmly. My uncle thought he could give away generations of Blackwood wealth to save some fish. I couldn't let that happen. How did you do it? Victoria's eyes gleamed with pride. He was so predictable. Every Tuesday night, he'd walk along the beach behind his house, checking on his precious turtle nests. All it took was a little push at the right moment, then holding him under until he stopped struggling. She set down her glass. The hardest part was acting surprised when they found the body. I had what Agent Chun needed. Victoria Blackwood had just confessed to murder. But before I could figure out how to leave without arousing suspicion, she did something that changed everything again. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. It was security footage from outside Emma's school, showing Agent Chun picking her up. Did you really think I wouldn't have people watching? Victoria's voice was ice cold now. The FBI has your daughter, David, and now I have you. The door to the penthouse opened and Richard Sterling walked in with 2 other men. They looked like the kind of people who solved problems permanently. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria said. You're going to tell your FBI friends that you couldn't get me to confess to anything. Then you're going to sign these contracts and become my loyal employee. In exchange, your daughter stays safe. And if I refuse, then Agent Chun will receive a very sad phone call about how little Emma was tragically killed while trying to escape from protective custody. Victoria's smile was pure evil now. Children are so unpredictable. Sometimes they run into traffic. I looked at the contracts, at the men blocking the door, at this monster who had killed her own family and was now threatening mine. Every instinct told me to sign, to save Emma, to worry about justice later. Instead, I did something that surprised everyone in the room, including myself. I smiled. "You made one mistake, Victoria," I said. "And what's that?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. It was a text message from Agent Chun, sent just minutes before I came upstairs. Package delivered safely. Grandmother very happy to see her. Victoria's face went white. "What does that mean?" "It means Emma isn't with the FBI. She's with my mother in Orlando, and has been since yesterday. What your people saw was Agent Chun picking up a decoy." I stood up, no longer afraid. "It means you just confessed to murder while threatening to kill a federal witness. And it means you're going to prison for the rest of your life." The elevator doors opened and Agent Chun walked in with 6 other FBI agents. Guns drawn. "Victoria Blackwood, you're under arrest for the murder of Thomas Blackwood and conspiracy to commit witness intimidation." As they handcuffed Victoria, she looked at me with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've done. I own this city. I'll be out in 24 hours, and then nothing." Agent Chun interrupted. "We've frozen all your assets pending investigation. Your lawyers are being arrested as we speak for conspiracy and evidence tampering. And your cousin Sarah just provided us with enough evidence to put you away for life." Victoria's empire crumbled within a week. The land fraud investigation revealed dozens of illegal deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. City officials resigned in disgrace. Police officers were arrested for taking bribes. The whole corrupt system that had protected Victoria for years came crashing down. Sarah inherited her father's legitimate businesses and immediately established the Thomas Blackwood Foundation for Marine Conservation. The first thing she did was offer me a job as the foundation's security director. Good pay, great benefits, and work I could feel proud of. Emma and I moved into a small house near the beach, close enough to her school that she could walk to classes but far enough from the water that I didn't have nightmares about drowning. Her asthma got better with the cleaner air, and for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about medical bills. But the story doesn't end there. 3 months after Victoria's arrest, I was walking Emma home from school when a black sedan pulled up beside us. My heart started racing, thinking Victoria's people had somehow found us. Instead, an elderly man in an expensive suit got out. "Mr. Martinez? My name is Harrison Blackwood. I'm Thomas's brother." He had kind eyes and a gentle voice. "I wanted to thank you for bringing justice to my family. What you did took incredible courage. I just did what was right." "Yes, you did. And that's exactly why I need your help with something else." Harrison handed me a manila envelope. My brother wasn't the only member of our family who died under suspicious circumstances. Our sister Margaret passed away in a car accident 6 months ago. The police said it was driver error. But I opened the envelope and saw photographs, police reports, and insurance documents. "You think Victoria was involved?" "I think Victoria has been eliminating family members who stood in her way for years. And I think you're the only person brave enough to help me prove it." Harrison looked at Emma, who was busy collecting seashells on the beach. "There are other children at risk, other families who deserve justice." I looked at the evidence in my hands, then at my daughter playing in the sand, then at this old man who had already lost so much to greed and evil. I thought about walking away, about keeping Emma safe, about the quiet life we'd finally found. Instead, I thought about Thomas Blackwood, drowning alone in the dark water while his niece held him under. About Margaret Blackwood, dying in twisted metal because she'd asked the wrong questions. About all the victims who would never get justice if good people like me chose to look the other way. "When do we start?" I asked. Harrison smiled sadly. "I was hoping you'd say that. But David, this time, we're not just going up against Victoria. We're going up against people who make her look like an amateur. People with connections that reach all the way to Washington. People who've been covering up murders for decades." As Emma ran back to us with a pocket full of shells, I realized that saving Victoria Blackwood from drowning hadn't been the end of my story. It had just been the beginning.